Greetings and salutations, all you beautiful individuals. It is another epi of Liga Unlock. Eric and Mark with you guys for yet another and probably the final year-end countdown or look back. Today we are looking at the biggest upsets of 2025. This is domestic, international, but still major region, and I feel like there are actually less crazy upsets this year than maybe in years past internationally and domestically.
That's not to say that there weren't these colossal upsets, that there weren't the disappointments, there weren't the triumphs of these lower teams. All sorts of things to look at when you're talking about the greatest upsets of 2025. Let's not waste any time. Let's dive into them because, man, these are some juicy matchups to talk about, even if I think the overall landscape that we got internationally wasn't quite as many of these upsets as we have in previous years.
Yeah, once you get beyond the five that we're going to talk about, they get less and less interesting or impressive. But we begin in the LPL, and let's transport ourselves back to Split 2. This is post first stand, the disappointing run from Top Esports. They have a good regular season, bounce back fine, get into playoffs, swiftly get dumpstered 3-0 by BLG into the losers bracket where they face a World Elite squad that came from that Nirvana group, had to climb their way in through play-ins to even get there, and proceed to win in 5 games against TES, the defending LPL champions. Even with the bad first stand run, nobody was expecting them to lose this series. Maybe people wanted them to prevent them from going to MSI, but not expecting.
Yeah, that's the important distinction to have in the conversation when you're talking about this upset that comes through for WE, is that Top Esports was that top team in the LPL. They are the champions of that first split. They are the representative of for the first stand, and they disappoint, sure, but they come back to the LPL and they go on a pace. They take care of business that you all, again, that you're checking the check marks going, okay, this is the Top Esports that won the first split. Yes, there is the hiccup and disappointment at first stand, but seemingly right back to business, bouncing back. And then comes the first playoff series that is dropped, the first time that you are starting to really, again, relive the nightmares, the doubts from first stand about this Top Esports squad, and all of them come through in that full 5-game series against WE. And yes, I think at that point you were having that conversation amongst LPL fans, amongst Top Esports fans, whether they wanted that opportunity, that shot again, knowing that maybe the performance wasn't going to be there. And certainly we saw that in that series against WE, that those doubts, those concerns, more than warranted, given what we had, even understanding that or hoping that the hiccup, the mistakes early in first stand were going to be fixed for Top Esports, did not come through in the LPL playoffs in Split 2.
And World Elite, actually, they were in that Ascend group, but they did stuff to play through the play-ins to beat LGD to even qualify for the main event. And Top Esports were 15-3. They were first in that regular season. So yes, as you said, they bounced back from first stand, only to have things fall apart and crumble in those playoffs. Then we're out of the LPL. We're going to the LEC. We're going even first stand. We're talking qualifying for that one, and this is the LEC Split 1 Finals. Carmine Corp rookie Kalist Yike versus his former squad in G2. And listen, anytime G2 is getting bodied 3-0 in a finals, they really only had a chance in game 2 of this series. But anytime that's happening, it's got to make some type of list, especially when it's the new kids from KC.
Already the improvement from the previous year of KC to what you were getting in first stand, significant enough of a conversation point and enough that would be entering them into a conversation of talking about some of these upsets, the matches they were able to pull off. None bigger than that finals in that first split of the LEC and taking down G2, the established Titans, the old guard of the region, and for Carmine Corp to complete that upgrade, to complete the turnaround that we have seen from them since that first split in the LEC. This was absolutely the exclamation point, sends them off to first stand where they have a reasonably strong showing. But certainly, again, I think this is the big moment to capitalize on, and really the one where the only one you can actually look at really for the rest of the year for this Carmine Corp team, not from a lack of performance, but because the expectations are shifted drastically after accomplishing this one. So you can't really have any of these other matchups equal out to being a significant an upset. But I think to add in the full change that you got from that first split a year ago from Carmine Corp, and then on top of it, having to topple a G2, take down that defending, iconic organization of the region, really was significant for me in one of the ways that this is one of the biggest upsets of the year.
And especially because in that upper bracket, you had G2 already beating Carmine Corp to stay undefeated in the playoffs, doing it in, it was 4 games, but relatively controlled out of G2. So they were the massive favorites heading into that one, already had that head-to-head. KC had to reprove themselves to even get to finals. Kalist was tried to almost poached by G2. Yike again against his former squad. There were so many storylines working against Carmine Corp, and they still come away with a swift, clean 3-0 thanks to Kana completely styling on Broken Blade throughout. Batting in that 3 spot is kind of a double whammy because we saw 2 sides of the coin, double-edged sword, whatever cliche you want to say for 100 Thieves. And we start with them being the chokers in that regional final 4 split 3 after destroying the Red Canids of the LTA South 3-0. They match up against Keatstar, who FlyQuest just dumpstered, and you're going, all right, great, we'll get the 100 Thieves FlyQuest finals. But Trimby and the boys had something else to say as 100 Thieves threw an absolute dud of a day against the LTA South champs.
Maybe the dud of all duds throughout the year. I think that would be an interesting examination as well on a list to go through and find some of these performances. But I think, yes, when you're talking about upsets, this one has to fit in here when you're looking at what, the established power seemingly was for the LTA North and where the teams had put themselves through, and especially this 100 Thieves after, again, dismantling, dispatching, all sorts of type of exaggerated words.
People were singing their praises. Yes, this team was always the second best team in NA, no question.
And it's one of those ones where you don't want to take away from Keatstar and what they were able to do in that match and what they were able to do throughout the year and level up and really show some growth and some good signs. You still have to throw this one into the upset category, given what type of disparity you had already seen and was established between the LTA North and South throughout this 2025 year. So to get that matchup, get that one, and really, again, propel yourself, give yourself some momentum heading towards the World Championship. I think that was really an important matchup to look at. Thankfully, when we are talking about LTA representation, and yes, it is only 1 year of LTA representation on this list, we can talk about looking at some positives as well in the upset category, because yes, baby, this is your classic value, 2 for 1. Maybe the first hot dog is a little, not so good. The second one is going to hit just good because we know it's 100 Thieves taking down BLG. And yes, it's a BLG where maybe you're not giving them as many points as you would have given, a couple of months ago. But still, at this point, and knowing where you're talking about 100 Thieves, being able to pull off this at the World Championship is a significant event for them.
And despite it just being a best of 1, versus a best of series, it's still the implications of just losing to Keatstar, coming in as that 3rd seed from the region and then toppling the defending champions and 1st seed from the LPL. And remember, this was their first match of Worlds, so we weren't feeling extra sus about BLG really until this loss.
And you add in the disappointment that comes through from FlyQuest as the #1 representative. You look at the way the scheduling played out for a team like 100 Thieves, getting this win, getting this upset against BLG, even if it doesn't amount to anything significant for the 100 Thieves, plays into how this event plays out, right? And who the matches are and what they are going to be from those days out. And I think 100 Thieves more than deserve their spot at the World Championship, and getting this win against BLG really did prove that. And let's be honest, There was a needed proving bounce back after losing to Keystar earlier in a couple weeks before the World Championship.
Yeah, and again, despite winning, that was the only game that they actually won at Worlds, but you're still leaving Worlds thinking 100 Thieves were probably better than FlyQuest because, yeah, they matched up against BLG, Top Esports, Hanwha Life, and T1 for an absolutely insane gauntlet to run through and had those competitive games against T1. But we forget about the Keystart thing and remember the BLG upset for 100 Thieves. The most lasting memory of upsets from 2025, and both of the top two, I think, no question, are these two series. You can talk about the order, but it's the same two squads. We're talking KT Rolster and GenG, and in the 2 spot, we have that LCK Summer Playoff Series where GenG looked absolutely unstoppable. KT they got their way into playoffs and absolutely shocked the world after going down 2-1. This is the BDD Zoe Game 4, and then we get some of these, really both series for these two squads. You got some spicy picks, but Lissandra Twisted Fate in the Game 5 matchup.
Oh man, what a story to talk about, that you have both of these ones and both of them are lined up as the top two that you get to talk about this one. And I think that they both hit just a little bit different when you are examining the exact profile of the flavor I think you're getting from both of these upsets, because I think you can talk about this first one in the LCK and realize this is GenG at their peak. This is the unstoppable, unbeatable machine that has stormed through the very, outside of the first split, has stormed through split 2, stormed and is going to storm through MSI, all sorts of things. And then you roll into KT Rolster, who says, nuh-uh, it ain't going perfect. No way, no chance. It's going to be us that stop what's going on for this GenG squad. And especially when you look, as you said, the picks that come through in the series, BDD, Zoe, which we did get to see a couple more times throughout the year, and it was one of my favorite champion picks that we have seen, find their way back into competitive play, especially in the right hands of certain mid laners being able to utilize it, and BDD is one of them. And I think as well, the real difference and the real importance and why this one falls into this category and this position for me, and I can understand depending on how you value it, whether it moves it up into the position 1 or 2, I think the disparity between where people expected the power levels for both of these teams to be heading into this matchup, there was no greater one. And part of that is because GenG is such a runaway train at the front of everything. And I don't mean the LCK. I mean everything that we had going on in the scene of League of Legends this year. And KT was very much so like every other representative that we had seen in the LCK that wasn't named GenG, Hanwha Life, or T1 at that point in time. So yes, that's the important one to look at. And as we know, though, it only gets more painful for GenG fans, because unfortunately the next upset comes during the World Championship.
And that's the main reason I think you're putting this next matchup in the number 1 spot, is this was the upper bracket round of the playoffs that they lost initially. So there was the rematch in losers where GenG proceeded to swiftly 3-0 KT in that rematch, but that was just the leveling up of KT. And despite KT Rolster being a much better form at Worlds than they were in those LCK playoffs, heading into this semifinal tilt, people thought KT got a pretty easy path to get there. They had CFO in quarters, who, even that result, people were picking CFO over KT, even though they end up 3-0ing. And we just had GenG play the series of the tournament. Such high levels against Hanwha Life that, again, this is GenG's year. They're getting to finals finally. They've already handled the demons of KT past, but they underestimated the power of this roller coaster.
Holy, yeah, we all underestimated the power of this roller coaster. And you know why? That's because it wasn't just the normal propulsion system setting us up for the loop-de-loop and, the BDD patented one. This was because you had Docdom popping off. You had everybody making the contributions on this KT team at a different level when you entered the World Championship. And yes, enough that you still, you got maybe a couple more people on your side. But the performance that you just saw at GenG against Hanwha Life, there is no way that people were moving off of that one, even if you still have some doubts about GenG on the international stage. This was going to be the matchup that they could take care of and keep moving on. They got help from their LCK brethren in the way that this one lined up. Wasn't the case on the day whatsoever. KT came to play, and they were taking the lunch money and making sure that they were staying alive at the World Championship.
Yeah, and the biggest difference between these two series, number one, didn't even need a Game 5 at Worlds. It was Game 4, KT taking them down. And in the LCK series, it felt like a Herculean flow state type of performance. KT had to be operating at such insane levels that you never thought they could replicate to win that series. The Worlds one, KT just felt like the better team and felt like they were in control. Even when they beat GenG in the LCK, it felt like it was an inevitability that GenG was going to come back. You didn't get that feeling in the World Series.
Yeah, I flip. That's what makes me kind of flip-flop on these placements just a little bit, even though I still hold strong that the World Championship one will sting more and is more of a significant loss. Yeah, it's because you're looking at the upset that happens in the LCK as, yes, a pure upset, total fluke. How could this happen? It's a one-off. No way that we could fall to a squad like that once again. And then you get to the World Championship, and that result, that series, the 4 games, that not 5 games that it takes to be dispatched after what you showed against Hanwha Life, it was such a strange 180 from being, okay, well, you're surely going to be one of the finalists now for the tournament because of what you just showed against what was supposed to be another potential finalist in Hanwha Life. And you're going to get KT, and it's going to be easy peasy. It was not easy peasy. It was denial, and it was absolutely crystal clear after those 4 games that there was no way you could make an argument for GenG to move on, to be deserving of that chance still at the event in comparison to the way KT had pushed themselves up and risen to a new level.
There's 100% an argument to be had which one of these games or series is number 1 or number 2 biggest upset of the year, but I'm not sure you'll ever have again. And by the way, no question, these are the 2 biggest upsets of 2025, but them being the same 2 squads in multiple head-to-heads, I'm not sure you'll ever see that again.
I'm ready. I'm calling it. No way. No chance. No chance you're getting this to happen again. Again, to have it be that matchup and the significance of that upset that we had during the regular split, and then to have it repeated, even higher stakes at the World Championship. And again, to come away with 2 different feelings from both of those upsets is remarkable in the end of it all. And I think, again, I'm going to issue out a New Year's resolution. GenG. I don't care how the whole year plays out. I can't make any promises on that. But I will promise you, don't find yourself on a list like this next year around. I don't want to be talking about it. Yes, part of it is because you have been so successful, so dominant, that you enable the opportunities for the upsets to come through and appear on a list like this. I don't want to see it. I don't care how you do it. Don't appear on a list like this again. Never mind. Twice in the top 2 spots, Mr. GenG.
Yeah, I was going to say, at least just show up once on the list. You know, we can come away with that, but yeah, twice is absolutely egregious and painful for Chovy fans and GenG fans alike. But that is it today for Liga Unlock. Eric and Mark here with you, absolute stunners. Thanks so much for hanging out and supporting, as always, and we will catch you on that flippity flip.